So the last time you were here, we had a slight discussion on what you would do with a Muppet movie. I have given you a
Yeah.
month. What have you come up with?
All right. Well, hey, baby. Yeah. I don't know, you gave me a month.
I gave you a month.
I have not thought about it for 29 days.
Hmm.
And then you texted me today and said, "Hey, you want to talk about this?" And I was like, "Oh yeah. I'll
Got
have
this.
plenty of time to think about this,
You
do
did not
30 days of
at all,
thinking in
did you?
today." I thought about it. Yeah, I have some
Yeah.
ideas. I think for me, I had to like, okay, what works about a Muppet movie? And because there was a few ideas, like I just thought, what are some of my favorite movies? And, what would they be like if we Muppetized them? But not all of, just because something's a good movie doesn't mean it would make for a good Muppet
Hmm.
movie. And I think one of the things, so like for example, like I thought about some movies with really good ensemble casts, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
ensemble Muppet. But like if you look at Muppet Christmas Carol, like it still kind of revolves around one singular character, and everybody
Yeah.
else is kind of contributing. So I was like, so it can't be two ensemble. So here's what I thought, and we might need to. I might need some help crowdsourcing the parts because I didn't get as far as to who everybody is.
Okay.
But I was like, Christmas Carol works because it's not even adapting necessarily another movie. It's adapting,
A
a work
story.
of, yeah, it's a literary work. It's um
Same thing with
a
Muppet
great,
Treasure Island.
yeah, it's just a great work of literature. And so I was like, okay, what are the great works of literature? And this might be a little bit of recency bias because there's a movie coming out, but I would love to see a Muppet Odyssey. I think Odyssey is a great Muppet story because you already have like it's broken up into episodes, so you can kind of go like it's almost each like a sketch,
Yeah.
sketch by sketch, like where they go. You have, Odysseus, which is your primary character. I think that's who you keep human, whoever's going to play Odysseus. And then, so you've got all the other support, around him from his crew. You've got the gods, you got his wife and kid at home, and so yeah, I didn't get as far as the casting everything. I had a
Okay.
few ideas. I think it makes sense to, Miss Piggy to be the wife, Penelope at home
Yeah.
makes sense. That does. So we're not gonna take too long on this.
Yeah.
But every thought that I had introduced a complication, right? Because I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense for Miss Piggy to be Penelope. But then I'm like, okay, but then now you have the human pig love interest, so you immediately take away the Kermit Piggy relational
That's
dynamic is
true.
now removed, and you start thinking about, and there's not a lot of Muppet villains. I mean, you got like Uncle Deadly maybe would work. He's kind of villainous, but like outside Sam the Eagle's like he's not a villain, but like he's
No.
he's like rigid, he's stern, he's a rule follower. So sometimes he can kind of play that. But like outside of that,
It's really kind of harder to
yeah,
cast the Muppets in something like that.
I think it'd be funny to do like Waldorf and Statler as like Scylla and Charybdis, like as the two sea monsters.
Yeah.
They're
That'd
like
be really
bickering
funny.
with each other about who, then they're trying to
Yeah.
go through the middle. And I thought about it
Sweetums
some, but
plays the Cyclops.
yeah, Sweetums is a
Mm,
Cyclops. Yeah, that's exactly where I went with that. I thought Hermes might be a good like that might be a good like Pepe the Prawn role, like maybe for
Yeah,
Hermes.
hmm
But like then I started getting to like, okay, well, who's Poseidon? Like Poseidon's like pretty much Odysseus's main like antagonist outside of like the suitors, back at home. And so I'm like, who would play? And that's when I started realizing like, yeah, there's kind of a lack of like villainous Muppets. Like you almost have to like create some new Muppets for this, like bring in
that's
some
true.
new
That's kind of what they did for
um
Christmas Carol, though. Like the all of the ghosts were not specific Muppets because they recognized that that was almost like too much like known entities, and it
Yeah.
kind of ruins part of that magic. And I think
that's a
that you
very
could
good
totally
point.
have regular villains. Honestly, that's also like a thing of I think you could keep another human if it is simply to be a foil to Muppets.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Because Muppets,
Kind of like what they
it's
did with the Muppets, the Jason
yeah,
Segel one.
yeah, exactly. I feel like it's a lot like like the concept of like there's no bad dogs, only like bad trainers kind of thing. I think
Yeah.
it's that like there are no bad Muppets. Like it's just a
Yes.
Muppet sometimes steps into that role, but then even Uncle Deadly's like, I am not evil, just because
I'm
I
not
have
a
an evil
Muppet. I'm a
laugh.
Muppet.
Yeah, it's like I am a Muppet. And it's a great line. It's a great bit.
I
And I
love
think
that.
that's the kind of thing that you kind of have at your disposal there. And since it is Muppetized, even the people that are your villains, you could probably just recruit to be with you. Sweetums being a Cyclops, but then in the end he's like, "Can I come with you?" And they're like, "All right,
Sure,
okay."
get your fun.
And the ship still leaves. He's like, "Wait, you're leaving without me." A classic bit for him as well.
That would be perfect.
uh and cameos would abound. Like you go into,
That's true.
each island is a chance for, some celebrity cameo to show up and do their thing. And so
It is kind of like a hallmark of Muppet movies is the celebrity cameo.
mm,
So
so it's unrefined. I didn't
no, it's all
finish
right.
the homework, but that's where I spent my month's worth of thinking
I
today.
like that better.
Today.
And welcome back to another episode of First, Last, and Best. Yes, we've got all the Muppet stuff out of our systems. We are now moving forward with actually discussing music. This is actually the first episode of the thought experiment. There's a question that I have, and I need answers. And honestly, there are only three people I thought I could go to with this, and they are the three gentlemen here with me. Let me introduce them one at a time from Timeline Scavengers, from his mother's house in Maryland. Colin is joining us here as he is enjoying his Christmas vacation extended with his family in Maryland. Colin, welcome back.
Hi ho, everybody. Nope, sorry, that's Kermit's thing. Hey, what's up? It's me.
Hi ho, everyone.
Hi ho, everyone. Oh, yay. But that's too much for Romano. Whoops.
That's too
The
much.
problem is you're not doing the arms.
Right. From his home in Southern Virginia, ladies and gentlemen, he's on for I think this is almost around about a dozen times. It's Jeff Riggs. Jeff is back on the program. Welcome back, Jeff.
Hey, thanks. I am happy to be here all the time.
All the time. And he is here from his home in Central Virginia because we're just all over the place, really. Ladies and gentlemen, he's got the best thighs in Richmond. He's whimsical as fuck. It's Mike Angle. Angle, welcome back, man.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Back again. Back again.
Back again, back again. All right, so first episode of the thought experiment, like I outlined in earlier this month in January, the thought experiment kind of started as just an idea of asking a question and trying to just figure it out, talk it out with some people. And this one has been kind of near and dear to me and something that is a continual theme throughout season two. And that is the idea of evolution in music, a band evolving from their original sound to what they are today. So I got the guys together. I asked the question, how are we able to appreciate and sometimes not appreciate the change? We're going to start with how we can appreciate. We each kind of picked a band that we want to discuss and how we can appreciate how their evolution. Since Colin is new to our roundtable episodes, Colin, I'm going to let you kick off, buddy. What?
Sure.
I forgot. Who was the band? Wait,
I chose Alkaline Trio.
Alkaline Trio.
Mhm.
Okay. So, like, what do you think about the idea, like their original sound versus where they are now?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to, I was actually just telling, since I'm home for the holidays, I was just talking to my mom about, everything that's kind of going on today. And she doesn't know these bands, from anything. She's a Carpenters fan, a Barry Manilow fan. She knows I've talked about Blink-182, but doesn't know really, I think, much about him. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, let me just sort of explain it real quick. And I gave her an example of like, God damn it. Um, with for me, like I've probably almost too stereotypical, but Cringe, I think, is one of the greatest songs I think of all time. And then, you go into like maybe I'll catch fire and everything like that from here to the infirmary. I actually like Good Morning, maybe more than from here to sorry, from here to infirmary, which I think feels controversial somehow. Um,
That was
but
my thing. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but like when you get to the end of Good Morning, Matt Skiba's voice is like has gone through the shredder. Like he is barely squeaking out the final lines of Blue in the Face. And then there's a little bit of time. There's a little bit of, vocal recovery. There's surgery. There's, everything under the sun. There's, vocal like not exactly like singing lessons, but more of like not pathology either. What's the word I'm looking for? Like just going to someone to like for like therapy to heal your voice and everything like that. And then you come back and you get a song like Mercy Me. And suddenly the guy has like a range and a tone to his voice that doesn't sound like he is pushing through a like mesh, like a metal mesh. Suddenly his voice is like absolutely soaring. And I kind of feel like, not that Dan isn't as good of a songwriter, but I feel like this is a time where Matt's writing also kind of takes off because he can do more. And then we slowly start merging into this sort of newer sound. By the time you get to like Agony and Irony, I feel like you're kind of like on that last bit of like the cusp of what is going to become the alkaline sound. Because then from like My Shame Is True through to today, there's been kind of a like kind of very specific, like every album, even if like the production changes a little bit, like everything sounds this way now. um but I think that they are still very clearly different songs. Like there's little things that like any artist has, which I feel like is almost like a signature or like a go-to thing. Like a lot of people like to do certain types of riffs that even if they change up the notes, you can listen to it and you go, well, that's Tom DeLonge because he loves doing those little octave, bullshits all the time. Um, there's a lot of stuff that's like very similar riffs for Skiba, but it's just like it's kind of just his style. Um, and then like you get to like even recently they put out three songs that they worked with Travis Barker on, Surprise, Surprise, Bleeding Out, and Oblivion. And it's just kind of like, yeah, man, I mean, like you guys sound great. And even if it's not the same as it was back then, um, the final thing that I'll say about like one of the reasons why I like this sound and just sort of the overall progression is there is a live performance of Cringe from, and this will date it a little bit. They did a live show on AOL Sessions back in like 2013, 2014. Um, and oh no, sorry, AOL Sessions was for Agony and Irony. Sorry, it's a Guitar Center. Sorry, Guitar Center. They do a live show for like a cable show, which is a crazy thing to think about. And they do Cringe, but like as they sound now, and like Skiba just sounds stupid good. Like it is such a well done live performance that to the point where I think that if you couldn't see it, you would think it was from an album. Like it's that good. And usually bands, especially punk rock and pop punk bands, don't always sound as good live. Just the energy is better. It's hard to hear, I gotta say. As someone who now has some missing hearing in the left ear, it's from doing shows, like it's hard to hear up there. But like they just sound so good. And I don't know, it's one of those things where I can get when any band changes the need to go, no, I need my original Skiba sound. I need my original God damn it or whatever. But this is an evolution where I just kind of I hear it and I go, yeah, man, I mean it's not the same, but it's still good. And that makes me able to accept the beauty of it all, I guess.
Okay. Wendell, as our resident Alkaline Trio fan, since you were the one that wanted to do the episode with Alkaline Trio in the early days of the podcast, like, do you feel close to the same way as far as Alkaline Trio is concerned, or?
I'll say this. Yeah, I mean, number one, yeah, Colin can talk as long about Alkaline Trio as I can, so that's good. We're gonna be fine. But yeah, no, I mean, the thing about it is I agree with everything that Colin was saying. As far as the evolution of Skiba's voice, and I mean, I will say, as far as Dan is concerned, I feel like he's number one. I mean, you can't take away his bass playing. His bass playing
Mm,
is so crucial to the Alkaline Trio sound. That being said, he's back burner Dan now. That's I hate to say it. I mean, let's be real. On Blood, Hair, and Eyeballs, he's on. He has two songs that he sings entirely. And the rest he's just doing backups and stuff, and that's fine. Again, although I love Versions of You, one of my favorite songs on the album. But
hmm
that being said, yeah, my I do I love where Alkaline Trio is at currently now. And honestly, for me, starting with Is This Thing Cursed? I feel like Is This Thing Cursed kind of began the kind of in quotes return to form that again I don't want to I hate calling them the doldrums, but for me I don't like Agony and Irony era and My Shame Is True, and just my least favorite of all the doldrums, This Addiction, is just kind of
Yeah.
yeah it's just yeah I hate to say it, but again, the good faith that they got from the nostalgia of everything helps me accept where they are today. And so I feel like when we go on journeys with bands, and your fans for as long as the trios has been along, I feel like the trio of all of the bands we're going to talk about, it's the oldest, I believe, the longest. I think so. I think that's
I think
correct.
so.
Yeah, I think so. But so with that being said, you're on the journey with them because of all of this good faith they got in the beginning, and they haven't let you down all these years later. And that's all you really can kind of, when it comes to bands, ask for. I
Yeah.
mean,
That's true.
they've had their ups, they've had their downs. You've been there through it all, but at the end of the day, where they are today, you can still be, proud to call yourself a fan. Number one, that's amazing, and number two,
hmm
I absolutely feel that with Alkaline Trio. So that's my 2 cents
Yeah.
on it.
Jeff, are you like how much do you listen to Trio, or are you just is that one of those bands that just kind of like,
There's so
they
many bands. Let's just be real. Like before, there's
that's
so
true.
many.
There's a lot.
Yeah, no, I love Alkaline Trio, man.
Love it.
And my this is just a weird connection, but one of my first introductions to Alkaline Trio was an old YouTube video of Colin Parker's
Yeah.
cousin, uh who is was a local musician that we played in bands together here, and him going around Walmart playing radio on an
Yeah.
acoustic guitar, and like getting like pissing people off and annoying them, and that's
Yeah.
like
That's his
um
brand, I feel. I fear.
Yeah, just
I
do
wonder if
that. Do
we
that
could
opening line, and then just see what people's reaction.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could even if that even still exists. I have no idea, but
Might
shout
need to
out
look
Jeb
for that.
if he listens to this. But no, I got into Alkaline Trio. So interestingly, I was not a fan from the beginning.
Mhm.
Once I got introduced to them, I kind of became a fan all at once. So I had like 4 or 5 albums that like I didn't really get a progression. I just like dove in and like listened to all of them. And so I think like probably to the best of my memory, the first time that I was like um a fan when a new album came out, right? Not I was catching up on a backlog, but I was already a fan and a new album came out was Crimson. And when Crimson came out, like from Jump, you're like, oh, there's a shift here, right? Like there's been a change.
Yeah.
Um but I loved it. Like I was like, this still works. And I don't know if I'm gonna bring up this parallel a lot tonight. But I'm all like I'm a pro wrestling nerd also, in addition to being a nerd of a bunch of other things. And like when you have a wrestler that's been around for a long time, and Alkaline Trio has been around for a long time, right?
Sure.
Their character has to evolve in order for them to stay relevant, for them to stay interesting. And the ones that do it the best are the ones that like when they evolve, it's a logical next step from where they were previously. There's a through line that follows them. It's not just change for change's sake, but it's a logical next step from where they were. And I think Alkaline Trio does that really well. Every time they kind of get to a new era or a new like season in their sound, you can tell like, okay, this is different. But it makes sense from like the last thing they were doing, right? It makes
Yeah,
sense, and you can see the foundations there in the new things as well. So it's not just a complete abandonment; it's just kind of a building on. And like, yeah, these days, if I'm feeling like listening to Alkaline Trio, like more often than not, I'm gonna go to the Is This Thing Cursed, or the newer one. Was it Blood, Guts, and
but
Eyeballs? Blood,
here,
Hair, and
Blood, hair,
Eyeballs?
and
Yeah.
eyeballs. Yeah.
Yeah. Like more recently, like if I want Alkaline Trio, I'm throwing those on instead of going back to like From Here to Infirmary or something, which I think
yeah,
was one that I really enjoyed before. Um, so yeah, I think the later stuff is what I am like when I want Alkaline Trio, that's what I want now. And I'll still go back and listen to the old stuff for
Hmm.
nostalgia and for fun. But if I'm just like, oh, I'm in the mood for this, it's usually a later album these
yeah.
days that I'm throwing on.
I
Honestly,
think that
yeah,
sometimes one of the nice things too about bands that have this kind of longevity and can shift in a positive way is that they are almost always getting better at like everything that they do as
Yeah.
well. Because like another thing to kind of like look at for me, and also another part of it too is they have more money to do these albums. Because like while I really love some of those early albums, I mean it's the same thing with like any band that has like a very clear. We had 2 days to record this album, and it got done in that amount of time.
yeah,
Versus like an album where they could go in like once a week and really flesh things out. They had cash to burn because the production value on some of these later albums is just significantly better. The mixes are better. Like they
yeah,
clearly took time to do multiple takes of things. Um, because like like I mentioned, like when his voice is like fully shredded to a crisp at the end, it's kind of like a that had to have been the best take they had, and quite possibly could have been the only take for all I know. Because back then, even though they were successful, they weren't like where they are now. So it might have been like a, hey man, the we close in 30 minutes and that's it. So
clock's a ticking.
yeah, and so I just feel like over time they all get better, and we haven't really mentioned it at all, but like they also both have done some side projects and stuff like that. Skiba loves to do like a 2 to 3 song side project and then never come back to it again. Um, but also I respect that a lot, where it's like
Yeah,
I got a song that doesn't fit Alkaline, but I want to get it out there. And
yeah.
then Dan had like 2 albums, specifically. Um, oh my gosh, I want to say it's like At the Party or something like that. That might not be the right name of that. Um, and
He's got the
oh god,
Falcon with the Lawrence Arms guy. I know that, but like,
yeah, and the Emergency Room. It's
yeah,
the one Party Adjacent. That's what it's called. From like 2015. Like, I think that's a great album. And if you're like really into Dan's style, there's some songs in there that are amazing. Pretty Teeth and Eye Contact, Don't Have a Thing, are all incredible. And part of me is kind of like, I feel like you could have put these on Alkaline albums because some of these do fit the sound. But like, I just feel like he's kind of slowed down a little bit in terms of his production, but he still is a clear like piece of the puzzle when they do these things now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. They aged gracefully, I think is maybe the main takeaway that I have on that.
I mean, I absolutely 100% agree with everything that's been said so far. And honestly, with Alkaline Trio, it's one of those bands that if I'm going to go and listen to them, it's going to probably be Agony and Irony. Although the new stuff they've done with Travis Barker is phenomenal and I really enjoy it. But I will, for nostalgia's sake, go back to listen to Good Morning and From Here to Infirmary, and maybe I'll Catch Fire. And those albums are fantastic still, and I still really enjoy them. But you're right, the fact that they're able to throw more money at it and the production value is so much higher. These new albums really do like say something, and it is one of those bands that seems to have gotten better and have progressive, especially Skiba's voice. His voice is so fucking good. It has gotten so great over the years. And I kind of see like a correlation, like when we were talking about Kenny from the starting line, Colin, where his voice seems to have gotten a lot stronger and has changed significantly over the years.
Hmm.
So, but I do want to transition this from talking about Alkaline Trio to talking about Angle's example of a band that has we were able to withstand the change. of their sound, and I feel like it's a little more significant in from their early days to where they are now. Engel, talk to us about Turnstile.
All right. Here we go. The meteoric rise of Turnstile. So, you know, of course it's going to upset like, capital H hardcore kids. That being said, I was never that per se. Like in high school, I needed my hardcore post. Okay, I was doing like I was doing like Fear Before the March of Flames. It was like Circle Takes the Square, like very obscure just shit that like I, I still love to this day. But again, it's not like, and it wasn't even like again, there wasn't any like knuckle draggers in Matthews County, okay? Like it wasn't
It's
like
true.
it's not like I even like had that around, but I mean I knew the classics. I liked Minor Threat. I liked, I would like the idea of straight edge from, obviously I was in the AFI and stuff like that. So like there was some hardcore that I was privy to, but was I, especially in like the early 2010s when Turnstile was really becoming a thing in Baltimore, was I privy to any of that? No, not at all. So the first time Turnstile came onto my radar was the Time and Space album. And it was only one song specifically. It was, I think I saw a music video online for The Real Thing. And The Real Thing's an amazing song. Sick riff. Like it is basically the roots of where they would potentially go with the next two albums. And the next two albums are the albums that, again, the capital H hardcore kids just like, they feel betrayed by. And in a way, I understand that, but in a way, it's just kind of silly to me. But it also is the time that at which all of this is happening. I'm a 36-year-old dude, so like me finding a band around 2018 or 19 and getting excited about them is different than when I was a teen. So I feel like that's just something to consider when you think about the trajectory of bands and your willingness to accept their change, because a lot of it is tied up in nostalgia and stuff like that. So I had no problems or qualms. In fact, I was very excited when like, okay, you know, um, Glow On has all of these heavy synth elements, and then that just gets expounded by tenfold and never enough. Like I was just fully on board. And then I saw them in September, and that was just insane because it basically recreated their kind of Fugazi moment that they had back in Baltimore, when Never Enough first came out this last summer, where they played for free in a park.
Hmm.
Basically, they played Browns Island, and we were on a fucking island, and it was open air. And I sprung for the extra rapids pass, where I was like literally right in front of the stage, because basically on the island, you're either like watching the concert from the rapids area, or you're watching people watch the concert, which is again, so that's just how it's laid out or whatever. But yeah, no, it was one of the definitely top five concerts of my life. Yeah, it was amazing. Um, again, just accepting change when like it seemingly is pretty fast. They've had some member change ups as well. Like, all of these are factors into, okay, will I or will I not accept this? And
Yeah.
it's not like even in their live shows they're disappointing the hardcore fans. They have a chunk where they're like, okay, we're gonna play stuff off Nonstop Feeling. We're gonna play stuff off Step to Rhythm. It's gonna happen. Like it's not like they're leaving their fans out in the cold like that. That stuff still exists for them, and they're gonna play it and maybe isolate some of the fans that only know Glow On or Never Enough, because that's a huge swath of their fan base now.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So it's all about not alienating the audience while still like again remaining true. And like that's the thing that like makes them so fucking cool. Like they want to, they're bringing everyone along for the ride. They're like, Haley Williams, come on, sing on this thing. This hip hop dude, Blood Orange, from the UK. Okay, you're gonna be on this song. Like it's just like, okay, they're just doing cool shit, and that also has to factor into, if a band is doing cool shit currently, that has to give them enough good faith to be like, okay, yes, they changed their sound, yes, they changed it dramatically, but is it so dramatic of a shift? Not really. I mean, it's still just like Gorilla Biscuits has always been fucking cool. That's essentially what fucking Turnstile is, and it will always be cool. Those riffs are like, and like that sound is timeless in my opinion. But like,
Yeah.
distorted guitars are always gonna be cool, you know. And then you add electronic shit on top of that, and production, just like the show that they're doing currently is just like, again, mind blowing, absolutely insane. So that's Turnstile. I love them. They are the band that I am most excited for because again, they also just don't engage with any sort of, of course there's online discourse. Do they engage with anything? No, because they're artists, like they don't have
Yeah.
to fucking care about any of that shit. So yeah, that is my love for Turnstile, and yeah, I just had to let everybody know about
I gotcha.
it. Mhm.
I mean, honestly, with me, like Turnstile, I didn't really get into until Glow On. It was actually, it wasn't even until this year that Turnstile was even on my radar. I think Angle had talked about them to me, and I was like, all right, let me give them a shot. I found Glow On at a record store in North Carolina, and that's when I started listening to them. And I was like, oh my God, this is really good. And I was told, like, this is a hardcore band. I'm like, this is okay. Okay, I can see it a little bit here and there. And then I picked up Never Enough, and I'm just like, okay, this is. I really wish I took a little more time to listen to earlier things, but I could understand why, like, diehards of the, like you said, capital H hardcore kids, uh, may feel betrayed by the evolution of the sound, but I really don't think it's
Not at
too
all, really. It's not
too
that.
like much of a betrayal from what they could originally have sounded like,
Oh,
because this
absolutely. There's
band
one
is
song specifically, this
spot
one called
on.
Love Lasso, and it's an instrumental track. It's literally, I mean, I know like some hardcore couples that have like walked down the aisle to this song. It is literally like a very slow,
Nice.
like chill ass, just like
Yeah.
very vibey like riff. And that's all it is. There's no vocals or anything to it, but it's just like, okay, they're, again, like ogres, they got layers, man. Okay, and onions too. They got
Ogres
layers.
and onions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so with that being said, yeah, I believe the seeds were planted long ago, and I just feel like, you know, um, you just weren't paying attention if you didn't see it. I
Yeah.
feel like, yeah, yeah.
Any thoughts, Colin?
Yeah, as a Maryland boy,
Mhm.
I do kind of remember very early on Turnstile. And it was definitely like a thing of they are for sure the early stuff is not made for someone like me.
Yeah.
And I remember a friend of mine being like, "Hey, the problem is, I of course now can I remember who it was that played the show with them because that band that I'm thinking of doesn't even exist anymore, kind of thing, you know." Um, but like there's people that we used to play shows with that they were like, oh, they're doing this show and they're doing it with these like two or three bands, and I was like, who the hell is Turnstile? Like I'd never heard of them before. um and then like someone at one point, probably like a year later, showed me like the first like EP, and I was kind of like, I mean, like I get it, it's not for me, but like I get it. So like I never really listened. And then in 2025 when Never Enough came out, and then I remember seeing it get like not necessarily like press necessarily, but just like it was getting attention, like it was being sort of spread around. I was like, wait, I know that band. That's a Maryland band. And I was kind of like thinking about the last time I remembered a band from Maryland making any kind of waves was like Ballyhoo. So that was also like a very, I guess, a long time, I guess, coming. And then I listened to that when it first hit, and I was kind of like, wow, okay, that's pretty different. And I listened to Never Enough quite a few times during like the summer of 2025. And so I was into it, you know. So I definitely got the love and attention that the band now has received. And even if they're like not top 10 or even maybe necessarily top 25 for me, it's like they probably wouldn't have made a list in the past for me, but now they do in some capacity. So I think that makes total sense that you can be down with like an evolution, which I guess is kind of the thing too, right? Like the whole point of it is like sometimes you hear something that changes and you go, I can't do this anymore. But sometimes you listen to something and you go, wait a minute, now,
Now I can do it. Yeah.
now I kind of fuck with it a little bit. Hang on,
Especially, yeah,
throw that track back on.
yeah, especially when it goes to poppier. The only time, ironically enough, another Maryland band that a band has kind of gone from poppier to heavier is uh also TUI alum, Justice Guy, Angel Dust. They've gone
Oh,
from poppy to heavier. So it's
Yeah,
kind of like, you know, you can be like, again, whatever your taste may be. Like, bands change, and again, yeah, it could be. It could be like, again, you could feel about it one way one year and the next completely different.
hmm.
Everybody's tastes are very malleable. They're all very unique. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of fandom in general, but especially of music. I feel like, yeah.
that's true.
Hmm.
Jeff, anything? Or did we think of everything?
No, not really. I
Yeah.
I haven't been I really haven't got into Turnstile. I have some friends who really like Turnstile, and those friends are friends that I consider cooler than I am. So
Oh
that's like the best
God.
compliment I can give them is the people that I consider cooler than me really like them. So, but yeah, as Engel mentioned earlier, there's so many bands out there,
There are.
and so
Yeah.
yeah, they're just one that has
That's
always
what
been kind of like adjacent to what I've been listening to. But yeah, I've never really done a dive into them before.
Mhm.
Oh, good. That's what my fiance's coworkers have said. It's just like, oh, I've never listened to Turnstile. I don't know Turnstile, but everybody I know that likes Turnstile is cool. So I mean, that, like,
Yeah.
Got to be
I'll take it,
something
Jeff.
there.
Thank you.
That's exactly how I feel.
All right. Hey, cool.
So
Thanks.
let us then transition into Jeff's band,
Yes.
and which might be it really the change is there with Reliant K, but it doesn't feel as significant as say like a Turnstile or uh like Matt Skiba's voice or something like those lines. But how do you feel about Reliant K's uh evolution as far as their sound is concerned?
Yeah, yeah. So before I jump into that, let's real quickly pay respect to the bit. The last roundtable discussion that we did, we said, how in the world did we find three white guys with beards and hats and glasses to be on the same panel? And we broke it. We broke the
We
record.
stepped
We
it
have
up.
four
Yeah.
white guys with hats and glasses and beards. And so yeah, we're setting
We stepped it up
trends.
this time.
It's
How did you find
amazing.
four?
Yeah, I'll say it's amazing that you clocked that because like before we started recording, and before you had jumped on the call, we made the same comment, and I was like, hey, at least we're all dressed for the part. Um,
Put glasses on.
so I
It
like that,
wasn't going
we
to.
all have the self-awareness, I guess, that we can go, hey, it's the culture, I guess.
It's time for the
How
hats
do
and
you
glasses.
find four guys that look like us that want to share their opinions? How does that happen?
I will say that the
So
ring
yeah,
light
so
keeps reflecting off my glasses, so they're annoying me. I'm taking them off.
um,
All right.
so yeah, so for Reliant K, and I think there is some merit to that. Their overall sound change is probably a little bit less drastic than some of the other bands that we'll talk about today. But as somebody who was kind of on the ground floor with Reliant K, their debut album, I discovered them and so was there for like every album. Their first three albums, which were self-titled, Anatomy of the Tongue in Cheek, and Two Wrongs Don't Make a Right, but Three Lefts Do, were all kind of they were in that vein of like it was good pop punk, like, but it's very cookie cutter. Like the lyrics were clever. Thiessen is a great lyricist, and so the lyrics were clever. The music was fine. It was good. It was energetic. It was poppy, good melodies, but it wasn't pushing the boundaries of anything. It wasn't experimenting with anything. It was basically just kind of giving you what you wanted. And they, okay, they came up in like the Christian youth group scene, like that's where they were from, and that was their primary audience. And I think they realized, this is me kind of projecting, so I don't have any insider info or anything like that, but it seemed like they kind of realized that, hey, like we've kind of done all we can in this like Christian youth group market. Like if we want to step out of that, be taken seriously, or maybe broaden our, horizons, broaden our listening audience, then we're gonna have to make some changes. And so the shift from uh two wrongs to it was not as drastic again as some of the other bands we're going to talk about, but it was certainly there. And they introduced a lot more keyboards into, a lot more piano into what they were doing. Their songs began to become more theatrical. They would do a lot more with the songwriting. Their songwriting began to mature. Their themes became a lot more mature. Writing to Christian youth group kids, they were like all kind of what you would expect, really on the nose, kind of ham-fisted spiritual themes. And when they kind of got into and beyond, they began to take a much more mature and adult view of some of those things. And I don't know how much you know about like white suburban Christians, but boy, do they love change. And they're known for being really open-minded and appreciating nuance and ambiguity. And so I remember when came out, there was a real big backlash to like I'm kind of putting too much of myself on the track here, but like if you grew up in that scene, there was like really like there was like a Jesus per minute. Like if you're a Christian band, how many songs say Jesus? Like how quick are you? And when that came out, there was like, oh, they're kind of like using a lot more figurative language. They're using a lot more metaphor. They're using a lot more illusion. And like that would continue for the next three albums. And so, but when came out, like I remember people making comments like, oh, Thiessen took some piano lessons and now he thinks he's a musician. And so they're changing up the sound. And I mean, and then that stuff, like in retrospect, people definitely came around on that album. And I don't think there's a lot of people who would not agree that it's an incredible pop punk album, whether you're a person of faith or not, because they were able to successfully cross that boundary and to be one of like those few bands that started in the like Christian but had real crossover potential because their songs were that good and because they sang about things once they got out of that like I'm singing for youth group kids mentality, they were able to talk about these themes in a way that was less particular and more universal. So people that like didn't necessarily have the same context that they did or the same experience, they're still able to connect with what they're writing, even if they may use a different language or a different grammar to approach those things, because the themes are really universal. And so when came out, that was a pretty big shift just in tone. Even if the music wasn't completely different, there was a big shift in tone and approach. They also that was their first album on a major label left. The Goatee, I think the first three came out on Goatee, and then they moved to Capitol when
Yeah.
came out. So again, wider audience there. And then the next two albums that would come from there, Five Score and Forget and Not Slow Down, equally good. They began to get even more theatrical and do even more stuff with production and layering and different instrumentation and changing up the arrangements and everything. And so those three albums are just incredible. And so I think uh, they really hit their stride. Like you had your first three albums and they were fine. They're still good. They hold up. But those three from to Forget and Not Slow Down are incredible. All three of them are just amazing. So to do the best work, like, three albums in, I think is saying something about that shift. Now then, here's where I almost didn't use Reliant K because they did another shift where they actually did lose me after Forget Not Slow Down when they went out, they did Collapsible Lung.
Yeah.
I just did not like it. And it was intentionally experimental. Like Thiessen said, like, hey, we didn't want to make a pop punk record. We wanted to make a pop record. They went and worked with a bunch of songwriters, which they hadn't really done before. And so they're working with these incredibly successful like pop songwriters, people that are writing songs for, like Katy Perry and, Jason Mraz. And like they're working with all these like huge pop icons. And then so now they're working, they're bringing songs to Reliant K for this album, and the combination of them intentionally doing something different with bringing in these other, it really felt that's what the album felt like. It felt like a collection of songs that like didn't get sold to Katy Perry and like didn't get pitched to
Yeah.
Jason Mraz. Like it felt like the ones that weren't quite good enough to go to the major artists, but they did with Reliant K. And so, yeah, I mean, that album I just was not impressed by at all. And then they did come out with an album after that that tried to move back in the right direction, and it was kind of like I do like it, and the more I listen to it, the more I like it. It's called Air for Free, and but I think I was I was burned by Collapsible Lungs, where I was like, I'm not sure if and then the more I listen to it, I'm like, okay, yeah, if you were to pull Collapsible Lung out of the discography, I think you could see the jump from
Hmm.
Forget Not Slow Down to Air for Free, and it would make sense. And so I think I can still consider Reliant K a band that I've evolved with because I just kind of forget that Collapsible Lung is there. It almost feels like an entirely different thing. Um, and I mean, they said that, hey, we're experimenting. We did this on purpose. Sometimes you get what you want when you experiment. Sometimes they kind of fall flat. For
Hmm.
me, it fell flat. But other than that, I think they have a pretty good track record of evolving as they've grown, as not just musically, but also in terms of themes, and their view of spirituality has matured as they've grown. They've deconstructed a lot of those earlier youth group years, and so yeah, their music has evolved, and I think they've done a really good job of keeping that through line minus one album.
Minus
It
one album.
takes like really good awareness to make an experiment and then go, it didn't work. And even if it's like you yourself enjoyed it, if you're like, we're losing the room, to say if we want to do it again, maybe we do it under a different name or something. Like, I think that that's like an important thing, to go, hey, y'all didn't like it's like playing any of the video games that like has the so and so like this. When it says everybody disliked that, and you go, hey, lesson learned,
This is
um,
received.
but in a way, it's also like I feel like it's all still very fitting. Um, I do believe I once read about a man who said and did some things that apparently everybody disliked, and then he had to kind of come back reborn, as well. It's also a little ironic that, all these fans are out there kind of getting up in arms about something that's more metaphorical and more about like it's not like necessarily to be taken at point blank, like it's about like bigger stories and all those other things, and to go, that's not my Jesus, that's not my Bible. It's like that's what the Bible is, bro. It's most of the stories are like lessons, not like an actual like you know piece
It
of
is.
bread split to 1,000 people. um yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've got like 1,200 Bible jokes in the chamber. My grandfather was a pastor, so I feel like I could, really throw some more out there. But yeah, I'm also someone who I think because I was like starting to lose my spirituality and everything like that as a teen, I feel like Reliant K hit for me at a time where I was like, huh, that's not how I feel, man. Despite going, that's a good song, I was kind of like, but I'm not like feeling the Jesus talk at the time. And now, like later on in life, there are songs where I can go back and go, actually, that was pretty good. I feel like I just was too like angsty to really feel how like I couldn't let my angst not outweigh like how clever something was, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but I totally feel what you're saying about like a shift, more about like when you say tonally, not necessarily musically, but about like verbiage. Um,
Yeah.
so that can be a huge change for sure.
Angle.
Oh, well, I'm more of an MXPX guy, but I did, of course. Thanks to actually your wife, Rob. Yeah, she
Yeah.
let me borrow 10 years in running, and yeah, I love that. But anyway, I do love Reliant K. I mean, I know, the Escape song. I know Sunny with a High with 75, but I did actually listen to, as we do on First, Last, and Best. Since I was more familiar with the early stuff, I listened to the Air for Free. And so,
Mm,
what I was hearing in that was basically they've kind of matured into their true form, because I feel like what they were trying to be previously was, kind of Ben Folds through a pop punk lens, and now they're just full on Ben Folds, especially with like all of the, keys and production and all that extra stuff as well. So I mean, um, that's what I've gotten from Reliant K. Yeah,
Nice.
and yeah. everything we're saying. Again, we have to forgive. We have to forgive sometimes. As again, as fans, um, if there is a stinker in the bunch, it happens, and that sometimes, we can only be so lucky to just have one collapsible lung in our life. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you have two, that could be pretty
Yeah,
fatal.
then
So I've
you're
heard.
kind of dead. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Let's
yeah,
just keep the train moving.
let's go.
And I think this one's going to be slightly shorter because I've covered this fairly extensively in season two. So it feels like I'm being a dead horse at this point because I could have picked a different band. I could have. I didn't want to. We're talking about the Wonder Years. Um, because when you start with an album like The Upside, it feels like, your pop punk verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, end. It feels like that album was very much a prototypical pop punk album, which you know what, honestly, I would put that maybe not on the Mount Rushmore of pop punk albums, but definitely in my top 10 favorite pop punk albums of all time. Because the Upsides is just, it was, when I first heard it, I was like, okay, this band's legit. And then you get into Suburbia, which still great album, fantastic. But then it's tonal shifts. It's shifting in different directions, but it also kind of coincides with Soupy's life and how he's progressing as a man. And then you get into Greatest Generation. Then you get into Sister Cities. Well, not my favorite album of theirs. It no wait, it was I'm sorry, because after the Greatest Generation was
No Closer to
um,
Heaven.
Yeah.
thank you, and then it was Sister Cities, and then it just the progression from album to album to album, the sound of the Wonder Years, and then them turning their music on its head with doing Burst and Decay. Like it, it's one of these bands that for one reason or another I was always able to I can't 100% articulate why I'm able to accept it, but for one reason or another, every single tonal shift, every single maturation point of Soupy's life, from being like, I'm on the road with my band. I love this. I'm doing this forever. To I'm married now. I've got a family. To I have kids. I need to think about this more. To literally singing a song how, and this is turning into a tattoo idea for me. I'm finding hope in the pocket of my winter coat with your gloves, a reminder that I'm not alone. As a father, maybe that's the point. Maybe it's like my my journey as a man is coinciding a lot with Dan's journey as well. So like it's the tone and the actual message behind it all is hitting me at the same points that it's hitting him. So maybe that's a better explanation of why I'm able to accept the Wonder Years and the tonal shifts and the just the content of what they're talking about, what they're singing about, what they're creating is coinciding with my own journey. But the Wonder Years is and will be, and I'm pretty sure because at this point, like my last 2 years on Spotify Rap, the Wonder Years has been like my top band. Um, but it's just a band that I will always ride and die with at this point in my life. So I mean, I've been waxing poetic about the Wonder Years for the last year, especially on this show. So
Yeah.
I really can't say much more than that for him.
Yeah. I mean, I just as a quick thing, since I have not ever mentioned them here, um, I mean, I do like the upsides. I think that Suburbia is something that has always hit pretty heavily for me. Came out swinging, woke up early, local man ruins everything. Like back to back, all three of those have some form of a point in my life of something that I have felt about myself or, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and I just feel like that it's kind of like having a Bruce Springsteen of pop punk in a
Oh
way,
yeah.
which is like someone
I
who
love that.
is a great storyteller, but is sometimes like embodying another person. Sometimes it is about an entirely different person. Um, like I think sometimes about like the line about, every not business, but everything on Main Street has shut down except for Morgan's mom's place, right? Like that line in particular, I feel like is a painting of so many main streets in small towns across America as things continuously, get worse. All I'll say on that, I'll keep those things to myself, I guess. But I just think about those sorts of things that like become something that to him is very hyper specific, but to anyone that doesn't live in like New York City or, Los Angeles probably comes from or lives in a place where it's like, oh yeah, like Main Street is kind of two things right now. And like, that's it. And like maybe a McDonald's or something.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that there's a lot of life stories happening in there where even if you're not in that same point in your life, I think that you can have something that either still speaks to something that you're going through, or you kind of can look at the songs that are, about now being a father kind of thing and be like, maybe one of these days that song will hit for me. Like, I like this song, and maybe this is how my parents felt. I'm not there myself yet, but maybe one of these days, like that line will really be something that I can then look to and be like, oh yeah, this really feels like home kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think that some bands like I love Blink-182 and I'll defend them till the day that I die. But like when we're in our 40s and still being like this girl when I was in high school, it's like, okay, man, we get it. You loved,
Not so much humor.
you loved that girl from homeroom in 11th grade. You've done it every album. We can move on, dude. You know. So like the bands that I think have like more timepieces, I think. Um, it's like Blink has like relatable in terms of nostalgia. Wonder Years is like relatable in terms of this is my journey.
Yeah. Definitely. I know we've talked about them a lot.
Yeah.
So if you need nothing, I understand.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add that you can't hear me say on like 3 or 4 episodes of this podcast already. So I'm not going to take up mic time adding anything else. But I love him. I agree.
Yeah.
Cosign.
The thing that
Amy?
you said about beating a dead horse, right? Something that
Yeah.
you just said made me think of that also sounds like it would be the title of a Wonder Years song. It's like at this point I'm beating a dead horse would totally be a full title of a song at somewhere on this discography.
It's a very
Reliant
real
K said,
possibility.
the only thing worse than beating a dead horse is betting on one. That's a Reliant K song.
That's good.
Angle? Do you have anything for me?
Well, admittedly, I'm MySpace era Wonder Years only. So if it's not about ninjas or Kool-Aid Man or Captain Crunch, but again, how look how far we have come, you know?
That's
Exactly.
true.
I mean, exactly. I mean, going from that and scrubbing it from the internet to literally where we are now. Like Colin was saying, Springsteen of pop punk, and everything.
I
Again,
do
I
love that.
want to listen more. There's just so many bands. Of course I know came out swinging. I know all that. But and what especially seems super cool, and again something that bands should do, are these sort of what I've heard you and Jeff talk about the what is it, Breath and Decay? Is that what it's called?
Birth and Decay.
But gotcha. Okay, where they reimagine songs completely. I mean, that's
So
you
fucking good.
need to do, stuff, experimental stuff like that is it's the juice. Yes, like
It
that
really is.
is that makes keeps bands interesting for sure.
So
Yeah.
now we kind of go the other way on this with bands that we can't accept for one reason or another. And I'll kick this one off. And I don't know if it's controversial or not, but there was a band that I fell in love with their first three albums, and that's Thrice. Identity Crisis, Illusions of Safety. It was Illusions of Safety where I really kind of picked up on Thrice, and then I went back to Identity Crisis, and I was there when Artists in the Ambulance came out, and I loved that album. I saw them live. They opened up for Dashboard, which was really weird. It was one of the weirdest lineups I've ever been to, which was
Get up, kids.
That
Yeah.
is a
it
weird
was
line.
Get Up Kids,
I was
Thrice,
at.
and Dashboard. That was just a very weird show, but for one reason or another, it worked. Um, but it was right after Artist in the Ambulance came out, and it was so freaking good. And then in '05, I can't pronounce the name of the album, and I'm not going to give it a try. And it there was almost like a tonal shift, and they kind of stepped away from the harder stuff, and we're going to something more experimental, which I get. You sometimes need to grow, but then the Alchemy Index came out, and then Beggars, and then Major Minor, and it's just like I gave up after that. Like I honestly, Mr. Artist in the Ambulance, I would get every now and again, but it stopped feeling like Thrice, and it felt like something so completely different from what they originally were that I like they've come through like a couple times in the last few years, and I just had no interest in seeing them because it's not the band I really want to see anymore. So, which really makes me sad because I really enjoyed Artists in the Ambulance. I have Illusions of Safety on vinyl, and it feels like it's just two completely separate bands. From everything Artist in the Ambulance to everything after is just for one reason or another. It's just the tonal shift, the change in their sound felt so complete, so quick that there was no real like start to shift, and then you kind of progressively get into it. It just
Mhm.
feels like it was such a nope, different sound, guys. We're going with something completely different throughout all of our hard stuff. We're doing all of this now. That's how it is, and it's just it felt so sudden that I would just just go like no, take a step back. So at least for me, with it, when it comes to Thrice, I couldn't get into it.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, like it's some bands, I mean, they stick the landing initially and then they kind of undo it. Like I kind of feel like that about Green Day. Because like American Idiot was like it made sense, but it was a clear departure to some extent. And then the next album, it was like, hey guys, nope. Then they started to get it's kind of been up and
Oh,
down since then. Thrice felt like the equivalent. I mean, sorry, I'm gonna go back to Green Day for one split second because here's my analogy: is that it feels like like that magic trick where there's all the stuff on a table, and they yank the tablecloth off, and everything stays.
yeah.
It feels like with Green Day, they did that, and everyone's like, "Ooh, okay, a fancy new trick." And then immediately after, they went, "Haha, just kidding," fuck you. And then they flipped the table, and you're like, "All right, well, I mean, sure, that's a response." With Thrice, it felt like they were like, "Hey guys, we're gonna do this thing, and it's gonna be so sick." And then not only did they yank everything onto the floor, but it's like their pants fell down too. Like, it is. I don't think like I listened to Anthology. I remember that one from 2012 because I remember being like, I want to give this a shot. And I have not gone back to them since. I tried a little bit earlier today to kind of like kind of put myself in these shoes again. But like I listened to 2025's Horizon slash West, and I was just kind of like, yeah, man, I don't know. I think I agree with my idea to just not come back to this. I mean, I'll obviously listen to like the early stuff. Um, I remember on my very first iPod, aging it, the Artist in the Ambulance was in there, and I listened to that quite a bit. But like now, whew, God, I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's embarrassing. And if this was a thing that they had put up on TikTok, today of like, did I write the song of the summer with like Horizon slash West? Everyone would be going, no.
Oh, it makes me sad.
I think if you ever have to ask that question, now that I say that out loud, if you ever go, did I just write the song in the summer? The answer is always no. It's you don't get to ask that question. It's other people go, I think this is it.
Unless it's
Like
Deadbolt.
Mm.
Deadbolt.
You know,
Oh God, what is
what a
To
jam.
Awake and Avenge the Dead? which is literally my favorite song they've ever done. Like it is so hard, and I love the breakdown. Like I remember like two stepping to that at that show and just being like, Thrice will never change. This is Thrice. And then the next album, I'm like, maybe not. Sad.
And then Chris Carrabba gets up there and it's like, it's time for hands
Like I have a mohawk, and I'm like, I don't really fit in. I'm gonna go sit in the seats now. I'll see you guys later.
And I'm not gonna play thrice apologist because I think everybody music is subjective. People should
Sure.
like what they like.
It's true.
And I'm a hypocrite because what I'm gonna say, I'm totally gonna say the opposite in like a few
That's
minutes.
right.
Um be
You're a complex man. You can say what you want.
Yeah.
because thrice, I think to me, the changing of their sound from album to album seems to be kind of that's just who Thrice is to me. Like that's part of it. Is like, yeah, we're not going to make the same album twice. We're going to reinvent ourselves from release to release to release. And here's where I'm a hypocrite because with Thrice it works for me where I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, I might as well be listening to different bands. Like rather than thinking I'm listening to different Thrice albums, it's like I'm kind of in the mood for this, and so I put it on almost as its own self-contained little project. And
Yeah.
again, in a minute, in a few minutes, I'm probably going to say something different because sometimes I do feel like, yo, if you want to change your sound that drastically, just be a different band. Like, don't but for some reason, for me, and again, I'm only speaking subjectively, thrice it works. There are eras that I prefer, like for sure, like Artist in the Ambulance is my favorite Thrice album, and then I do really like Visu, which came right after. But that's my favorite era, but I don't think there's a Thrice album that I'll put on and be like, this is bad. It's just like, no, this is a totally different
Yeah.
style. And I think I appreciate Dustin, his writing style, and so I think that's where like he shines as a songwriter, being able to write compelling music in different genres and with different, I like
Hmm.
his solo stuff too. So again, I'm kind of there's probably some bias that I'm bringing into it, but for some reason for me, there's a ton of bands it doesn't work for, and Thrice it does, and I'm predisposed to be upset at Thrice because. I was one of the bands that I play in. We were putting together a thrice cover set for a show, and ultimately the venue got shut down before the show happened, so we never got to play the show. But we were practicing a cover set, and I am not the world's best bass player, but for the most part, I'm like, if I commit myself to something, I can get it. There's some obvious exceptions. Um, you know, uh, I was gonna bring one up, but it didn't come to the top of my head fast enough. But "Stare at the Sun" was one of the songs that we were covering, and I practiced for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I could never. I could maybe play that bass part right for like 3 seconds, and then it would get off. And like it's the combination of being fast and repetitive, but also with slight variation. So you can't get into flow state where you're just repeating the same thing because then it changes. And so yeah, I should be like I was humbled by Thrice, so I should be out to get him. But no, I like him a lot. And yeah, so I definitely agree with everything you guys are saying. But for some reason, for Thrice, it doesn't bother me, whereas there's a ton of other bands where the exact same thing drives me crazy. So
Right.
take
Well,
that
let's
for
watch
for
Jeff
what you will.
say something completely the same, but also in a completely negative light with the band he chose.
Yeah, yeah, let's expose the hypocrisy immediately.
But we still love you, and that's all that matters.
I do think it does bear, we didn't do a whole lot of setup and intro at the beginning, but I think this is probably a good place to jump in and just say that like the band that I'm going to talk about and all the other bands that we're talking about, like I don't fault them for wanting
Not
to
at all.
change their sound. Like I think you
Totally.
have to have integrity as an artist, and so if you want to change your sound, I think you got to do it. And like sometimes people are going to come with you and sometimes they won't, but I never fault a band for doing that. It's just like, hey, you went somewhere that I no longer like it's not my thing anymore. And
Yeah.
so that's why I get to that. Like, hey, maybe this sounds like it should have just been a different project instead of keeping the same name. Um, which again, with Thrice, you can say that as well. But the band that I think that there was a few that I tossed around for this one as well. But I think, and maybe it's because it's a relatively recent example, but the band Trash Boat, I think, really almost has been like a whipping boy in the scene for this exact thing. They came out with their debut album in the mid 2010s, 2015, 2016.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Nothing I Write You Can Change What You've Been Through. And I was really, really excited about that as a debut album. I checked it out. There's some bangers on that album. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's a complete no skip album. There are songs that are definitely I like better than others, but it had so much potential as a debut album, and there were songs on there that grabbed me immediately. Like even the opening track, uh, "Strangers," and it's a great track. It's been like Millington covered it on their brass emo stuff. Like they got Dan
Oh yeah.
Campbell. Yeah, they got Dan Campbell, not Millington, but Trash Boat got Dan Campbell as a feature on the bridge of that song, and so which I think is actually why I even knew about them is because of the Dan Campbell
Mm.
feature. I think is what turned me on to them initially. But I love the album. I was excited about it. I was like texting friends like, "Hey, this is right up your alley." Like it's that mid 2010s like sad boy pop punk. Like it was in the vein of like, Story So Far, but like with a little bit of like the aggressiveness of like Set Your Goals a little bit mixed in. Like it
Mm.
worked. Then they came out with their second album, Crown Shyness, and they kind of changed a little bit, but not in a way that completely threw me off. Like they kind of, instead of being more of like that aggressive pop punk, they kind of threw in some post-hardcore in there. Like when I listen to Crown Shyness, I hear like a lot of Under Oath influence and like and some of that a little bit more post-hardcore leaning into their emo punk sound. There's still a little bit. You had a couple tracks that had like the do da da drums and stuff like, and but overall it was a shift that I was like, okay, you made a change, but I'm feeling this. It's not the same, like it's not the direction I thought you were going, but like I can still rock out to this. And it's your second album, right? So it's not like you had this like, entrenched sound or anything yet. Like, it's cool. And so I really like Crown Shyness too. Like I'll put on both of those albums. I really like both of them. And then something happened between album two and album three. And when album three came out, like, oh geez, I couldn't even tell you what it's called. What's it called? Don't You Feel Amazing? And no, Trash Boat, I don't, because that album, like, they just completely changed. Like, if anybody's listening to this, like you don't even have to go listen to these albums. Just put on the opening track of their debut, put on Strangers, and just listen to like 30 seconds of it, and then go to the opening track on Don't You Feel Amazing and just play 10 seconds of it. It's the contrast is so ridiculous. They went into this whole different vein of like almost like industrial new metal influence, but like but like totally different style with the vocals. Like the vocals tried to be a little more artistic and like a little less aggressive, but like it just was missing. And like literally every and they also committed this cardinal sin of like, some of the tracks on the album are a little bit closer to their old stuff, and like most of it is not. So what they released for the single, the one that sounded like the old stuff, right? So people hear the single, they get excited. You go into the album and you're like, oh, you tricked me. Actually, this is not what I came here
It's
for.
true.
I'm trying not to uh judge the music qualitatively. But they definitely set an expectation that wasn't delivered with the album. So yeah, so and they have put out more albums and I couldn't tell you if they're good or not because I never went back. Like I just never listened
Yeah.
to any of the other albums. I was like, "Hey, you want to be a different man?" And like it was so like I had to go to media. Like when the album came out, I was like, what happened? And like I'm reading interviews and stuff because I was like, this doesn't like it was so drastic. And they basically were like, yeah, we didn't want to be constrained to like one genre. And like we felt like pop punk was limiting us and we just didn't want constraint. And like, cool, man. Like again, I think you have to follow your heart. I think you have to be have artist integrity. You have to follow your creative vision. But like, if you like pay your dues in pop punk, and everybody who loves you is into pop punk, and then you change into a different band, don't expect all the pop punk bands to like come with you. And so yeah, that I don't know if it's maybe it might be recency, it might be just because the change was so drastic, they were still a new band. Like, they hit they didn't run into the sophomore slump. Like the second album was good, and then all of a sudden you hit or album three, where like a lot of bands are like that's where they really solidify who they are, and it's like no, you're a whole different thing now. So yeah, I understand that, again, some of that is completely counter to what I said about Thrice, but yeah, for whatever reason, Trash Boat, it didn't work for me. Maybe because they didn't have as much time establishing themselves before the shift. Maybe because they just hadn't earned enough trust from me before they made the shift. But yeah, that's the one that just I was like, nope, you keep doing your thing, but I'm not following.
I was going to say, pop punk kids are notorious for being able to accept change very, very well.
Mm.
No,
I think that like I totally am with you on a band needing to have to build the trust because like I think that is why those two examples don't make you a hypocrite, at least in my eyes. Like once you have something established and then you do a huge change, I think that that can still be kind of like a I don't know about this man, but like if you are then like a thrice apologist, then it makes sense that you're one because you've been so entrenched within that space that you're like, no, you know what? They're like, I like them enough as musicians that I trust the journey that they're going to take me on. But like someone who's brand new to it, especially when they have like a tone. I don't know if this is more about being painted in how you feel about them, but if they were like, I mean, pop punk is limiting to us. Like if they're being like snooty about it and like elitist, it's kind of giving like the kid who suddenly became popular in between the summers of school and then comes back and you're like, hey, what's up, dude? You used to have lunch with them all the time, and they're like, haha, who are you, dude? I'm now with the cool kids. I sit with the jocks, and you're like, all right, sure, like I guess that's a thing now. I guess I won't ask you to come over and play Super Smash Bros. Anymore. I think that like some bands can do the sort of shift. And I also think that sometimes you can do the thing where you get experimental, even if it's just like a song or two in an album. And I think that that's a clever way of being like, hey, we threw a few things on there just for fun, Real Big
what do
Fish
you guys
loves to
think?
do a song or two where they'll just like throw in other genres just to be like, look at how good we are as musicians. We can play any genre we want to. We just choose to be a ska band in the most outrageous outfits, you'll see this side or that side even of the Mississippi. Um, and I think that like they pull it off because they turn it into almost like a gimmick, but it becomes a fun thing, and then they go back to their regular shtick, but like totally throwing people under the bus and being like, nah, like get on board with the new us. Nah, you've not built that trust.
Yeah, I was chatting with Neil, my guitar player, about this weekend, and I wish I could find it. I tried to look, I couldn't find it, but I was listening. I don't remember if it was if it was an article I was reading or if it was a podcast episode I was listening to. It might have been like something off Lead Singer Syndrome or something. I can't remember, but there was this conversation where the pop punk scene, you see people do this kind of thing where they change their sound consistently because their take, again, I can't remember if this was an interview or an article that I was reading, but their take was that the pop punk scene is pretty easy to break into and to saturate, but you almost immediately, by like two albums, you almost immediately plateau. And so the only way to break that plateau is to be able to get consistent radio play. And so their take was the reason you see a lot of bands that like as soon as it seems that they're breaking out in pop punk, their sound changes, it's because the only thing they can do to get to that next level is to pursue radio play. And so you get an album that goes like the pop direction because they're trying to find the single that they can get on the radio. And so I don't know if that's what this was because I feel like they
Mhm.
shifted towards something less radio accessible in their shift, but maybe it was just like a hey, we've got this set of fans in pop punk. Now we need to branch out so we can continue to grow and not stagnate, not plateau. They just did so in a way that, at least to me and to a lot of other people who were posting online at the time, felt like it alienated, like Colin was talking about, alienated the old fan base to pursue something new instead of trying to make that change like maybe less drastic or in a way that built, we talked about the through line with some of the bands that in the first section that we thought they did that really well. It was so drastic with no kind of familiarity, and so it just kind of seemed like they were alienating the people that got them to where they were to be able to try to branch out into new markets. So
Speaking of pop punk, Engel,
Okay, geez, king of transitions over here. What the heck, Rob? Okay,
it's one of
but
the few things I'm good at. Intros and
geez,
transitions.
that's why he's the host with the most. Holy moly! But yeah, no, yes. My pick for couldn't get down with it was Newfound Glory. Now, my history with Newfound Glory. It was one of those first bands for me that kind of like felt like my own. I was getting a lot of hand-me-down shit from my sister, but it was actually this girl Catherine in sixth grade. She gave me the self-titled, and so I was like, okay, awesome. And listen to that. I would babysit my neighbor's cat. They had cable, and so of course, this Sticks and Stones hadn't come out yet, but I was privy to Sticks and Stones, classic, amazing, amazing album. And then, of course, you got Catalyst, and then you got Coming Home, all those things. I love all of it up to that point, and then fell off super hard when all the stuff with Steve came out. I mean, that is why, and then I just for years and years just didn't listen to them at all. And then around probably like 2020 or so, like around pandemic time, I was like, okay, well, I need to revisit Newfound Glory. I need to give it a fair shake. And unfortunately, it was all still the albums with Steve on it, which sucks. That's the terrible thing. It's like, okay, well, not without a fight. Turns out it's really fucking good, and then like, unfortunately, yeah, Resurrection, the other stuff, Make Yourself Say, like that stuff, like I just was not into it, and like Forever Times Infinity, there are some jams on there, like the Jordan Rodman and Pippin song. I love that. That one's good. There's some good songs. There's individual songs, but on a whole, like again, goes back to what Colin was saying about Blink 182 in particular, where it's just like it's all tied and rooted in nostalgia, where it's just kind of like, okay, um, I know how this made me feel when I was young, and and I want to listen to it again now to kind of recreate that or live in that particular moment. Like so I guess I'm talking less about the sound and more just like obviously, when there's member changes, because they get arrested, it happens. It's happened. It happened to Coheed. It happened to Newfound Glory. These things happen where it's just kind of like, okay, this detrimentally like changes the sound of the band. You can either, be a Coheed where you're still creating, new engaging music that I, care about and like want to listen to, or it kind of like you're in a state of arrested development, which I feel unfortunately because I love that early shit. That's why it's just so disappointing to me that like for me personally that like I wasn't able to hop back on board after Steve. So it's just kind of like yeah. It just all around sucks. It's not a good feeling. I try and I gave it a fair shake. That's the other thing. It's not like I just I'm not gonna listen out of principle. I
Yeah.
Right.
gave this thing a shot. Also, they never replaced him. That's the other thing that like just I can't understand, like or like I know, and then you got Chad's cancer, you got all sorts of other stuff tied up in that, and all sorts of feelings as well. But it's just kind of like, okay, well, all right, it's cool they got Ryan Key from Yellow Card. It's cool that they got the 4 Year Strong guy to like do some live shows and stuff. But like that's all in lieu of Chad when he was getting treatments and stuff. Why is there a dude who is just kind of nameless next to the drum riser? You know what I mean? Like that feels a little
Yeah.
soulless to me, and it doesn't feel like a band. It just feels like okay, we booked
We
these
found a
festivals and we're
musician,
touring
throw him up
forever.
there.
Exactly, Rob. Yeah, it's just like we're gonna be on tour forever, so we need somebody, anybody, and
Yeah.
that's where um, my qualms with NFG come from. Yeah.
Honestly, with me and Jeff and I have talked about this once,
Hmm.
maybe twice,
Yeah.
maybe a lot. Newfound Glory felt like one of those bands that maybe tried to evolve with Coming Home, but
Yeah.
got such a hard backlash from the faithful that
Mhm.
they're just like instantly like spun the wheel and were like, no, never mind, we're back over here,
And it
guys.
sucks because on that album, I mean, Hold My Hand is an amazing, amazing song.
Yeah,
When there's piano on it, it's like it's such a catchy ass song.
it's
That
a
song
good
rips.
album.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then it just like they were like, you know what, let's get back and let's stay in our lane. And they felt like they just never left the lane. They just didn't want to
Mhm.
evolve. They just want to put out the same album and over again, just with different words. It doesn't feel it feels stale,
Yeah.
which is kind of like they're still good live, but at the same time, it's just like the fact that their music just isn't catching anymore, at least with me. It feels like just like I said, stale. Um,
Yeah, I was when you put this in the chat, I was interested to see where you were gonna go because I do feel like Newfound Glory gets that rap as like they're the band that didn't evolve. They just
yeah.
like they do the same thing over and over and over again with, diminishing returns, but they never invent themselves. And I'm not going to retread the same ground that Rob just covered because we talked about it. Whether I may be totally off base, but it feels like it was because of the negative reaction to Coming Home, which I think everybody eventually came around on, but at the time it was just really panned. And they immediately were like, "Oh, well, here's Screen to the Stereo. Please still like us." And then like, "Here's Tip of the Iceberg, some more, and then here's our hardcore personas. Like, come on,
International
come
Superheroes
back."
of Hardcore.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then after that, it was just kind of the same album. And they're good, they're fine. I don't really like Radio Surgeries, a little for me, but like the other ones, Resurrection, I thought was good. I think everything on Resurrection should be sped up like 10 beats per minute, and then that album will be like way better than it is. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. If it's coming from like I do see where you're coming from now, but I think that that is a result of them having some fan backlash and then them like snapping back like a rubber band and be like, just kidding, we'll never do it again, we'll never change. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, they're too timid. They're not like I think that obviously you should listen to fans like the people who are supporting you, like there's a healthy in between on all of this kind of stuff. You can take notes and go, okay, so they didn't like that, but we can't do the exact same thing again. So maybe we split the difference and see if we can find like a happy medium or, slowly ramp up into like a new thing. Um, but instead just go, oh, haha, sorry, my bad. And just like for the rest of time,
And
like I get it because it does change because it just gets it's like photocopying the same thing. Like over time, it just gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and there's no contrast, no edges.
yeah. And well,
Um,
I did love the idea of the first one, the From Your Screen to Your Stereo. I mean, the first one, let's be real. I mean, come on, like,
mhm.
It was really
you're
good.
you're you know you're being different or trying to shake things up. It can't be covers, period. I don't
Yeah.
care if it's from movies or whatever, it's just like have an original thought or idea. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, it's a tough sell because I also like it. We mentioned it before too of like when a lot of bands have like their most success on like their second or third album,
Yeah.
and that kind of becomes sort of the mainstay for most of the audience kind of thing. It can be difficult to then figure out where you go from there. Um, and like that's a thing where I have to frequently tell people like, yeah, man, like it's never gonna be the same as like Sticks and Stones. Like you're never gonna have another one of those, you know. But you have to sometimes just go, okay, so if I can't get this anymore, what am I willing to accept on this level? You know, like what, like can I just go? That's kind of its own special moment in time. You know, can this be good? Um, they have a new album coming out. I think either this month or sometime in the next couple of months here that I've heard the first two singles from. And like one of them I thought was pretty catchy. And if in my mind, I don't think this is from the same band that made that album, I kind of end up going, oh, this is fun. Like I'm enjoying this. But like the minute that I really start to think about it, I find myself thinking in that same way where I'm like, but it's kind of, it now kind of feels cookie cutter because I'm thinking of all these old things. So it's a really hard line to kind of pull yourself back from. But on the flip side of that, here you go. Here's a transition for you. A
Ooh.
band who has a early lead, right? Like as in terms of like starting off with some of their best work of all time. Um, I liked the band Punchline. Um, as previously mentioned, you know, of my cousin, who was someone who also, you know, toured and was in bands. And so he was 6 years older than me and was always putting me on to, new music. If it wasn't on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater soundtrack, I was probably getting it from my cousin Jeb. And that would always be like a, hey, we're hanging out for the holidays. Here's 12 new albums being put on your iPod. Go check these out, right? And I was always really appreciative of that because I didn't know where to look, especially when you're like 10 and it's like pre, broadband internet kind of thing. Like, how do you figure that stuff out,
I
right?
remember
I guess
those
AOL
days.
sessions. I don't know. And MySpace, I guess too. I did peruse bands on MySpace. That's the thing already brought up. But the album Action from 2003 is just such a good album. And then 37 Everywhere is like a very small shift, but like still very clearly the same band. Everything is great. Um, I didn't really stick with them, not necessarily because I was like upset with anything that they did, but just I think they kind of fell off of my personal zeitgeist for a bit. Um, so I did kind of miss I think I did have Just Say Yes as well. Just didn't listen a lot. But then like between Delightfully Pleased, which is 2010, and then the EP that they had in 2012, I really fell off. Then they had an album in 2013 that was very short. It's 7 songs, and I feel like it should be an EP, not an album. But it's just a thing where I listened to that and I kind of went, who is this? Like every now and then on things like Spotify, you'll see a person try to like make themselves as an artist and they choose a name that they never did the research on to see that that's already a band. And then a song somehow gets attributed to like another band.
Hmm. Hmm.
Recently, there was a song that was new by Goldfinger and it was 100% not Goldfinger. And so I thought maybe I was listening to another band that happened to be, I was like, maybe this somehow is in the wrong spot on Spotify.
Hmm.
But then I listened in, I was like, no, that's the same voice. It's just like there's a song on this album called 21 Forever, Forever Ever, parentheses Forever Ever. And it's like EDM meets pop radio meets like I don't even know what. Like it's just like a genre mashup that kind of makes me go, okay, I don't know how to feel about that. And then I fell off obviously from there. Came back in 2018, kind of like, oh, didn't know they were still around. Lion was fine, but it was not good. Um, and so then this year, it's 2026 now, but last year, 2025, September was pretty big for albums. Like there was a lot of, new albums coming out from a lot of, kind of big names. I mean, specifically Starting Line after nearly 20 years. Um, Motion City Soundtrack, came out with a new thing. Originally, the Ataris were supposed to release an album in September, but then they said, no, sorry, we're finishing the album in September. I was like, okay, sure. All right, yeah. Just they always drag their feet. Come on, man.
Yes.
But then I found out like randomly one day, I was like, wait a minute, on my radar or whatever it's called, but Discover Radar or whatever it's called. Um,
Release radar.
thank you. Discover Weekly Release Radar. Thank you. Um, there was a song from an album called Somewhere to Land, and it had just come out like 2 days prior. And I was like, Punchline? Wow, I haven't thought about them in like a decade. I should listen in. And I don't know how to describe the just immense disappointment. Like the first track is called I Don't Want to Live in This World Anymore, which is very much like I kind of have like I want to tease about Futurama, but I can't directly rip off the line. So I'm gonna do this thing, and then it's gonna be this little pop radio hit. And then it just continuously gets worse and worse and worse. And then they have like new versions of old songs that got worse somehow, you know.
Oh,
And like all these things go through, and I just kind of look at this and I go, man, like I remember in 2005 when I was listening to the 2003 album Action like on repeat all the time. The song The World was like maybe one of my top songs at the time. I was obsessed with that song. I was so desperately like, someday I'm gonna be in a band that plays stuff like this. And it's like if I was ever gonna be in a punchline style band, uh, I'm glad I didn't because then I may have ended up on the same trajectory, and I don't know if I could live with that music. Um, I feel bad for just absolutely bashing the stuff, but it's like I don't know how you go from like a very promising career because like it felt like they were gonna grow up and like kind of end up in line with some of these bigger bands. Like it felt like we were kind of like bringing up the next generation in a way. And then they just sort of fell off the face of the planet, and then they came back with just some of the worst, like it sounds like it should be maybe Disney radio, Disney pop radio on a couple of these songs, but then again, EDM, then mixed with like a remix that isn't a remix. It's just all over the place. I don't think they know who they are. And I think that at the end of the day, the punchline ended up not being funny.
Oh,
And
that's
that's
just
a disappointment.
I don't know if we can really say anything else after that, just because that was just the perfect punctuation mark.
Yeah, I just have one thing to say. I feel
Please
like
do.
they're
I got mad.
they're the they're the bizarro version of their contemporaries and peers who they have toured with. They wanted to be Fall Out Boy so bad, and instead they were Punchline. You know, and that's all I have to say about it. I mean, Heart
Absolutely.
Transplant's a great song. I mean,
Mhm.
Fallout Boy also in contention for this podcast episode in terms of
okay, yeah,
We
someone
might
Yeah,
have
solution
to
you
one of
do a
us should have. One of
sequel
us should
episode.
need.
We
thought about
we
them too. Yeah.
we might have to do that. We might have to do a sequel episode to this
have.
Yeah.
because this
Uh,
episode's
Honorable
already gotten
mentions.
I
really
think
long.
so. I think overall, the thought experiment wasn't a success. I think.
Hmm.
I thought this went really well.
Yeah.
I actually had one secret surprise band that I was going to talk about, just to throw everything off. But we've already been recording for an hour and a half, so I think maybe we'll save that for a different day. So I
Ooh,
thought the experiment was
cliffhanger.
a success.
Yeah.
We will. I think this is going to be wind up being a sequel where we'll do this again. We'll talk about more bands we feel like we can evolve with, and those we cannot. However, for now, we will be taking a break and doing something else instead. Next week, we actually have James Jarvis coming back, and we will be talking about music and tattoos. Nothing really specific because it's James, and we just like the vamp, and it's a good time. As always, you can find us on social media, First, Last, and Best Podcast, TikTok, so Instagram, Facebook, streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, and over on YouTube. Uh, Possibly putting out shirts soon. If you want one, please get back to me. I just need to know whether or not there's enough people out there that want a First, Last, and Best T-shirt that will make it worth my while to actually spend money on it. Uh, Hopefully, you're going to just start doing an actual order in February, but we'll see. Um, we'll be back next week. Colin, Engel, Jeff, thank you guys so much for coming on and for being a part of this. And honestly, I thought the experiment was a success. So we'll see you next week.